Trina, hey girl, hey. Sorry for my tardiness, y'all. Me and hubby was sitting talking, and I completely forgot about the time. I thought I still had like another 15 minutes. No, it was 17. I'm like, oh shoot. And I still didn't fully have myself together, so sorry, people. Tiffany, peace and blessings. Okay, let me get this up. Streaming. Peaceful greetings, Uncle Nathaniel. Alright, here we go. Oh, it's popping up. See, one of my children was trying to crack my password last night. Can tell it's throwing up hints and stuff. Did you forget your password? I bet it was Josh. Alright, y'all. Happy Thursday, everybody. Alright. Messages coming through from last night. I didn't check none of my messages. Alright, y'all. Happy Thursday. It is August the 12th, day 231 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the Proverbs. And guess what today is? Today is day 900. 900 of the 3-year consecutive day count. Remember that is without the Sabbath or the feast day Sabbaths added into the count because we are resting. Today we read Ezekiel chapter 20, 21, and 22. Then we're going to pick up where we left off at on Fossilized Customs on page 305. Okay. Alright, y'all. Let's go ahead and do the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah. Okay. All right, beautiful people. All right, the Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting at verse 3. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the mighty one of our fathers, has promised us, in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our mighty one, he is one. And you shall love Yahuwah, your mighty one, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes to fear Yahuwah, our mighty one, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah, our mighty one, as he has commanded us. Salutations, Nikki. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started. I can't move this thing out. What? Oh. Okay. All right. Ezekiel chapter 20. Ezekiel chapter 20, the rebellion of Israel. On August the 14th, during the 7th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, some of the leaders of Israel came to request a message from Yahuwah. They sat down in front of me to wait for his reply. Then this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, tell the leaders of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. How dare you come to me and ask for a message? As surely as I live, says the sovereign Lord, I will tell you nothing. Son of man, bring charges against them and condemn them. Make them realize how detestable the sins of their ancestors really were. Give them this message from me. When I chose Israel, when I revealed myself to the descendants of Jacob in Egypt, I took a solemn oath that I, Yahuwah, would be their God. I took a solemn oath that day that I would bring them out of the land to a land I had discovered and explored for them, a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the best of all the lands anywhere. Then I said to them, each of you, get rid of the vile images you are so obsessed with. Do not defile yourself with the idols of Egypt, for I am your God. But they rebelled against me and would not listen. They did not get rid of their vile images they were obsessed with or forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I threatened to pour out my fury on them to satisfy my anger while they were still in Egypt. But I didn't do it, for I acted to protect the honor of my name. I would not allow shame to be brought on my name among the surrounding nations who saw me reveal myself by bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. So I brought them out of Egypt and led them into the wilderness. There I gave them my decrees and regulations so that they could find life by keeping them. And I gave them my Sabbath days of rest as a sign between them and me. It was to remind them that I am Yahuwah, who has set them apart to be holy. But the people of Israel rebelled against me, and they refused to obey my decrees there in the wilderness. They wouldn't obey my regulations, even though obedience would have given them life. Even though obedience, that's simply all he asked. He said they wouldn't obey my regulations, even though obedience would have given them life. They also violated my Sabbath days, so I threatened to pour out my fury on them, and I made plans to utterly consume them in the wilderness. But again, I held back in order to protect the honor of my name before the nations who had seen my power in bringing Israel out of Egypt. But I took a solemn oath against them in the wilderness. I swore I would not bring them into the land I had given them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most beautiful place on the earth. For they had rejected my regulations, refused to follow my decrees, and violated my Sabbath days. Their hearts were given to their idols. Nevertheless, I took pity on them and held back from destroying them in the wilderness. Then I warned their children not to follow in their parents' footsteps, defiling themselves with their idols. I am Yahuwah your God, I told them. Follow my decrees, pay attention to my regulations, and keep my Sabbath days holy, for they are a sign to remind you that I am Yahuwah your God. But their children too rebelled against me. They refused to keep my decrees and follow my regulations, even though obedience would have given them life. Even though obedience would have given them life. And they also violated my Sabbath days. So again, I threatened to pour out my fury on them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withdrew my judgment against them to protect the honor of my name before the nations that had seen my power in bringing them out of Egypt. But I took a solemn oath against them in the wilderness. I swore that I would scatter them among the nations because they did not obey my regulations. They scorned my decrees by violating my Sabbath days and longing for the idols of their ancestors. I gave them over to worthless decrees and regulations that would not lead to life. I let them pollute themselves with the very gifts I had given them, and I allowed them to give their firstborn children as offerings to their gods, so I might devastate them and remind them that I alone am Yahuwah. Judgment and restoration. Shalom, shalom. Judgment and restoration. Therefore, Son of man, give the people of Israel this message from Yahuwah, the sovereign Lord. Your ancestors continued to blaspheme and betray me. For when I brought them into the land I had promised them, they offered sacrifices on every high hill and under every green tree they saw. They roused my fury as they offered up sacrifices to their gods. They brought their perfumes and incense and poured out their liquid offerings to them. I said to them, what is this high place where you're going? This kind of pagan shrine has been called Bama, high place, ever since. Therefore, give the people of Israel this message from the sovereign Lord. Do you plan to pollute yourselves, just as your ancestors did? Do you intend to keep prostituting yourselves by worshiping vile images? For when you offer gifts to them and give your little children to be as burnt sacrifices, you continue to pollute yourselves with idols to this day. Should I allow you to ask me for a message, O people of Israel? As surely as I live, says the sovereign Lord, I will tell you nothing. You say, we want to be like the nations all around us who serve idols of wood and stone. But what you have in mind will never happen. As surely as I live, says the sovereign Lord, I will rule over you with an iron fist, in great anger and with awesome power. And in anger, I will reach out my strong hand and powerful arm, and I will bring you back from the lands where you are scattered. I will bring you into the wilderness of the nations, and there I will judge you face to face. I will judge you there, just as I did your ancestors in the wilderness after bringing them out of Egypt, says the sovereign Lord. Notice how he said he was going to bring them back into the wilderness of the nations. That means into the wilderness amongst other people. I'm bringing you just like I did for your ancestors in the wilderness. Because remember, they weren't just out in the desert. They were literally among other surrounding nations. Because if you go back and read, you will notice that they began to gain ground. They began to take over some of those wilderness nations, right? So I will bring you into the wilderness of the nations, and there I will judge you face to face. I will judge you there, just as I did your ancestors in the wilderness after bringing them out of Egypt, says Yahuwah. I will examine you carefully and will hold you to the terms of the covenant. I will purge you of all those who rebel and revolt against me. I will bring them out of the countries where they are in exile, but they will never enter into the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahuwah. So he said when he bring us back, he ain't bringing us directly into the land. He said, you're going into the wilderness of the nations, and there we're going to start dealing with all this stuff that y'all done got built up in y'all system. This is where we're going to shake off all these gods and all this rebellion. And those that choose not to cleanse yourselves, you're going to die right there in that wilderness, right? And only those ones who shake themselves free and get clean right here in this place, only y'all will come with me into this land that I've promised for you, this beautiful place that I've scouted out. It's the best in the world. That's when me and my people going to hang out. Listen, I'll go back to 35. I will bring you into the wilderness of the nations, and there I will judge you face to face. I will judge you there just as I did your ancestors in the wilderness after bringing them out of Egypt, says the sovereign Lord. I will examine you carefully and hold you to the terms of the covenant. I will purge you of all those who rebel and revolt against me. I will bring them out of the countries where they are in exile, but they will never enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahuwah. As for you, O people of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Go right ahead and worship your idols, but sooner or later you will obey me and will stop bringing shame on my holy name by worshiping idols. For on my holy mountain, the great mountain of Israel, says the sovereign Lord, the people of Israel will someday worship me, and I will accept them. There I will require that you all bring me all your offerings and choice gifts and sacrifices. When I bring you home from exile, you will be like a pleasing sacrifice to me, and I will display my holiness through you as all the nations watch. Then, when I have brought you home to the land I promised with a solemn oath to give your ancestors, then you will know that I am Yahuwah. You will look back on all the ways you have defiled yourselves, and you will hate yourself because of all the evil you have done. You will know that I am Yahuwah, O people of Israel, when I have honored my name by treating you mercifully in spite of your wickedness. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. judgment against the Negev. This message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, turn and face the south, and speak out against it. Prophesy against the brushlands of the Negev. Tell the southern wilderness, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Hear the word of Yahuwah. I will set you on fire, and every tree, both green and dry, will be burned. The terrible flames will not be quenched, and will scorch everything from south to north, and everyone in the world will see that I, Yahuwah, have set this fire. It will not be put out. Then I said, O sovereign Lord, they are saying of me, he only talks in riddles. Next chapter, Ezekiel chapter 21. Yahuwah's sword of judgment. Then this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, turn and face Jerusalem, and prophesy against Israel and her sanctuaries. Tell her, this is what Yahuwah says. I am your enemy, O Israel, and I am about to unsheath my sword and destroy your people, the righteous and the wicked alike. Yes, I will cut off both the righteous and the wicked. I will draw my sword against everyone in the land from south to north, and everyone in the world will know that I am Yahuwah. My sword is in my hand, and it will not return to its sheath until its work is finished. Son of man, groan before the people. Groan before them with bitter anguish and a broken heart. When they ask why you are groaning, tell them I groan because of the terrifying news I have heard. When it comes true, the boldest heart will melt with fear. All strength will disappear. Every spirit will faint. Strong knees will become as weak as water. And the sovereign Lord says, it is coming. It's on its way. Then Yahuwah said to me, Son of man, give the people this message from me. A sword is being sharpened and polished. It is sharpened for terrible slaughter and polished to flash like lightning. Now will you laugh? Those far stronger than you have fallen beneath its power. Yes, the sword is now being sharpened and polished. It is being prepared for the executioner. Son of man, cry out and wail. Pound your thighs in anguish, for that sword will slaughter my people and their leaders. Everyone will die. It will put them all to the test. What chance do they have, says the sovereign Lord? Son of man, prophesy to them and clap your hands. Then take the sword and brandish it twice, even 3 times, to symbolize the great massacre facing them on every side. Let their hearts melt with terror, for the sword glitters at every gate. It flashes like lightning and is polished for slaughter. O sword, slash to the right, then slash to the left, wherever you will, wherever you want. I too will clap my hands, and I will satisfy my fury. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. Omens for Babylon's king. Then this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, make a map and trace 2 routes on it for the sword of Babylon's king to follow. Put a signpost on the road that comes out of Babylon where the road forks into 2. One road going to Ammon and its capital Rabbah, and the other to Judah and fortified Jerusalem. The king of Babylon now stands at a fork, uncertain whether to attack Jerusalem or Rabbah. He calls for his magicians to look for omens. They cast lots by shaking arrows from a quiver. They inspect the livers of animal sacrifices. The omens in his right hand says Jerusalem. With battering rams, his soldiers will go against the gates, shouting for the kill. Remember how I was telling y'all, King Nebuchadnezzar didn't want to go. Look, he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go to Jerusalem. He said, I ain't fooling with them people. Them your folk. And he said, look, I wanna go attack them, or I want to attack the Assyrians. That's why Yahuwah said, the king of Babylon, he stands at a forked road, deciding he's uncertain of which way to go. Look, let me go back up. The king of Babylon now stands at the fork, uncertain whether to attack Jerusalem or Rabbah. He calls for his magicians to look for omens. They cast lots by shaking arrows from a quiver. They inspect the livers of animal sacrifices. The omen in his right hand says Jerusalem. With battering rams, his soldiers will go against the gates, shouting for the kill. They will put up siege towers and build ramps against the walls. The people of Jerusalem will think it's a false omen because of their treaty with the Babylonians, but the king of Babylon will remind the people of their rebellion. Then he will attack and capture them. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Again and again, you remind me of your sin and your guilt. You don't even try to hide it. In everything you do, your sins are obvious for all to see. So now the time of your punishment has come. O you corrupt and wicked prince of Israel, your final day of reckoning is here. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Take off your jeweled crown, for the old order changes. Now the lowly will be exalted, and the mighty will be brought down. Destruction, destruction. I will surely destroy the kingdom, and it will not be restored until the one appears who has the right to judge it. Then I will hand it over to him. A message for the Ammonites. He getting everybody, ain't he? Like, whew. Your Facebook was acting up, Trina. Okay. Verse 28. And now, son of man, prophesy concerning the Ammonites and their mockery. Give them this message from the sovereign Lord. A sword is drawn for your slaughter. It is polished to destroy, flashing like lightning. Your prophets have given false visions, and your fortune tellers have told lies. The sword will fall on the necks of the wicked, for whom the day of final reckoning has come. Now return the sword to its sheath, for in your own country, the land of your birth, I will pass judgment upon you. I will pour out my fury on you and blow on you with the fire of my anger. I will hand you over to cruel men who are skilled in destruction. You will be fuel for the fire, and your blood will be spilled in your own land. You will be utterly wiped out, your memory lost to history. For I, Yahuwah, have spoken. Last chapter for the day, y'all. Ezekiel chapter 22. The sins of Jerusalem. Now, this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, are you ready to judge Jerusalem? Are you ready to judge this city of murderers? Publicly denounce her detestable sins and give her this message from the sovereign Lord. O city of murderers, doomed and damned, city of idols, filthy and foul, you are guilty because the blood you have shed. You are defiled because of the idols you have made. Your day of destruction has come. You have reached the end of your years. I will make an object of mockery. I will make you an object of mockery throughout the world. O infamous city, filled with confusion, you will be mocked by people far and near. Every leader in Israel who lives within your walls is bent on murder. Fathers and mothers are treated with contempt. Foreigners are forced to pay for protection. Orphans and widows are wronged and oppressed among you. You despise my holy things and violate my Sabbath days of rest. People accuse others falsely and send them to their death. You are filled with idol worshippers and people who do obscene things. Men sleep with their fathers' wives and force themselves on women who are menstruating. Within your walls live men who commit adultery with their neighbors' wives, who defile their daughters-in-law, who rape their own sisters. There are hired murderers, lone racketeers, and extortioners everywhere. They never even think of me and my commands, says the sovereign Lord. But now I clap my hands in indignation over your dishonest gain and bloodshed. How strong and courageous will you be in my day of reckoning? I, Yahuwah, have spoken, and I will do what I have said. I will scatter you among the nations and purge you of your wickedness. And when I have been dishonored among the nations because of you, then you will know that I am Yahuwah. Yahuwah's refining furnace. Then this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, the people of Israel are the worthless slag that remains after silver is smelted. They are the dross that is left over, a useless mixture of copper, tin, iron, and lead. So tell them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because you are all worthless slag, I will bring you to my crucible in Jerusalem. Just as silver, iron, copper, lead, and tin are melted down in a furnace, I will melt you down in the heat of my fury. I will gather you together and blow the fire of my anger upon you, and you will melt like silver in fierce heat. Then you will know that I, Yahuwah, have poured out my fury on you. The sins of Israel's leaders. Again, this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, give the people of Israel this message. In the day of my indignation, you will be like a polluted land, a land without rain. Your princes plot conspiracies just as lions stalk their prey. They devour innocent people, seizing treasures and extorting wealth. They make many widows in the land. Your priests have violated my instructions and defiled my holy things. They make no distinction between what is holy and what is not. They do not teach my people the difference between what is ceremonially clean and unclean. They disregard my Sabbath days, that I am dishonored among them. Your leaders are like wolves who tear apart their victims. They actually destroy people's lives for money, and your prophets cover up for them by announcing false visions and making lying predictions. They say, my message is from the sovereign Lord, when Yahuwah hasn't spoken a single word to them. Even common people oppress the poor, rob the needy, and deprive foreigners of justice. I looked for someone who might rebuild the wall of righteousness that guards the land. I searched for someone to stand in the gap in the wall so I wouldn't have to destroy the land, but I found no one. So now I will pour out my fury on them, consuming them with the fire of my anger. I will heap on their heads the full penalty for all their sins. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. Sheesh, that felt like fire coming from the pits deep down in my shanana. Sheezy peace, y'all. Shatina, hey girl, hey. Okay, y'all. Whew, oh my goodness. That was Ezekiel chapter 20, 21, and 22. And he ain't done. We're going to pick that back up tomorrow. Yeah, that's Ezekiel. Look, he talking to his own people. He talking to us, our hard-headed, raging kinfolk.
I'm just say this. What I was, let's call studying, that the normally don't study, you know what I'm talking about. That's crazy that you read that, because my mind is not thinking everything. So that, I don't even think y'all understand. I know y'all think y'all might know more than me, but I feel like I'm on a whole different level. This whole little Torah joint is a whole little riddle. Everything, look, this is one thing about the Bible you need to understand. Never take it literal, because it's going to catch you off guard, because it's literally a whole riddle. Riddles have a bigger meaning. Like, yo, y'all are not understanding what I'm piecing together right now, and this is crazy.
Jeremiah is an old soul.
Like, for real, yo. This is the reason why I'm able to, like, piece all this together. Like, yo, I'm only 18. I think, what, 16 is when it started? I'm just piecing this all together left and right. Hey, yo. What?
He be getting so excited when he understands some stuff.
Like, look, I was just watching all this stuff. Like, I was just like, even while I play the game, I'll mute my game. I was just listening.
Makes sense, don't it?
Like, everything's just clicking together. I'm just like,
yeah.
Looking at the sun is different now. Just like, yo, what? That's crazy.
Speaking of the sun, we'll be talking about the opposite of that today. We will continue on with the moon phases. Like, real talk. That is true, son. Yeah, like, what?
You can't say that out in public. Everyone look like you crazy.
Yeah. That's why you trying to pull this open. You went outside, half dressed to stand in the sun.
Looking at him like, hey, You know what? It's so cool.
He's sunbathing this morning, y'all. Grabbing that good energy from the sun. I talked to y'all about that before. I tell you, when we go out in the sun, it's like you're energized. Like, y'all gotta test it. If you're in a house a lot and you tend to get cabin fever or you have bouts of depression, it's because you're lacking the nutrients, the phytonutrients that comes from the sun. Get out there. I ain't gonna say get naked, but if you got private property where you can get naked, ain't gonna be flashing nobody. Yeah. Get naked out there in the sun and watch how it energizes you, right? Like me, I get out there, I don't be naked or nothing, but I have a little sundress or whatever, take my head wrap, everything. I love going to the pool with the kids because it's a big open area and just sunbathe all day. I don't know if y'all can tell up here that I've gotten a little darker, but even my legs, I'm like, oh my gosh, I done got black. So I don't think y'all can really see my tan so much, especially when the sun be shining in. But my legs is dark. Okay. But anyway, Jeremiah, don't distract us. Okay, y'all. So, yes. Good rising, son. All right. Okay, babe. All right. Love you too, babe. Okay. All right. So, the moon phases as seen from the earth. There are many pitfalls as we earnestly contend for the belief which was once delivered for all, delivered to the set-apart ones. What? Let me read that again. There are many pitfalls as we earnestly contend for the belief which was once for all delivered to the What? Hold on. Which was once for all. Okay. I was reading it too fast. They don't be putting commas in here. I'm a stickler for punctuation. I know sometimes I be talking ghetto, but I'm a stickler for English. Hold on. Hold on. They be throwing me off. Okay. There are many pitfalls as we earnestly contend for the belief which was once for all delivered to the set apart ones. Okay. There is a new moon and a full moon, but no crescent or silver moon is ever mentioned in Scripture. Here we'll study how the earth, moon, and sun move together to provide the signals for the annual festivals. Okay, so it has this moon phase chart. I'm not sure. If you got the book, you can see it, but I'll hold it up a few seconds so you can look at it. I'll screenshot it. Maybe you can check it, but stare at it later. Or you might be able to stare at it while I'm reading over it. All right. Okay. That's long enough. All right. We'll discover the importance of the 7 annual Sabbaths of Yahuwah's year, Leviticus chapter 23 and Deuteronomy chapter 16. We're influenced by older teachers who explain how to identify a new moon by watching for the sliver to appear in the western sky at sunset. They teach this is the signal to watch for that begins the first day of the new moon. For about 3 years, I counted the feast using this sighted crescent moon as the start point. Each time the full moon arrived when I counted all 14 days. By my count to 15, the festival day, the moon had begun to shrink smaller or to wane and was missing the amount of light it had started with. Then I investigated for scriptural-based evidence that could validate what they were saying and found nothing to support it. They claimed the Yahudim used to do it, but that's hardly validation because what some groups may have practiced in the past doesn't make something correct. The sighted moon was adopted by Anan in 767 CE, who broke away to form the Karaites. Certain sects of Israel were different in their practices, as we see several distinct groups mentioned in the Messianic writings. The worldwide body of dispersed Yahudim that remain true to the Torah today have additional baggage, and in parentheses he has like the Talmud, right? Like the Talmud, but they are unchanging in their core principles, such as the 7-day week, the 7th day Sabbath, the annual Moedim. Moedim means appointments, or which is referring to the feast days, right? And how they determine the beginning of each moon. What is a week? A day and a moon. A week is a unit of 7 nights and days. A day is from, he put it from evening to evening, but we have done more than enough videos to validate what a full day cycle is. And a full day cycle encompasses 2 evening periods, the day and the night period. That's one full day. You will witness this cycle every single day, right? And it goes in a certain order. So this whole evening to evening, I know people still believe that, and that's okay for you if that's where you're at right now. But nature will not lie to us. You can go outside every single day without having to listen to anybody. And after sitting out there for about a week, you're going to notice a pattern, right? There's an evening period there are 2 evening periods which look exactly the same. And if you were put outside, if you were disoriented and you were put outside during an evening period, that time where the light is coming in or going out, you would not know unless you sat there a little bit longer to see whether this particular evening period progressed into daylight, or if this particular evening period progressed into the nighttime, right? It's two of them. They in our the English language, we recognize those evening periods by the terms dawn and dusk. They look exactly the same, right? You just have to wait a little bit to see, okay, this is the first evening period because the sun is out, right? And we're going to the day. Oh, this is the second evening period because the night is coming in. Even if we didn't experience the day previous before this evening period comes in, we would know that it's the second or the last evening period of the day because it ushers in the night, I mean the darkness of the night, right? And it stays the darkness of the night till that next evening period comes where it begins to brighten up. It's kind of that hazy gray type look outside, right? That's evening. From evening to evening was the first day. When it says from evening to evening was the first day, literally the light of day. Then the night comes, right? Then we roll into another evening period. People misunderstand that completely. And they think, oh, the day begins at evening, then you go to bed and start your day. No, guys, just common sense. Just look at it. I know what they teaching you and what they done taught from the Jewish people, but nature tells us different. Everybody. It's like, how can y'all go out in nature every single day and still believe this garbage? Like, we ain't gonna start. What is a week, a day, and a moon? A week is a unit of 7 nights and days, right? A day is from a day, meaning the daylight hours. A day is from dawn. It is encompassed by dawn, then dusk. Experience from whatever location one happens to be on earth. Wherever you go on earth, you're going to experience this same exact cycle, right? A moon is concerned with neither a week nor a day, but is the complete orbital cycle of the moon around the earth, beginning and ending when the moon comes between the earth and the sun. It happens to take 697 Earth hours or 29.5 days, and this orbit is not concerned with any location on the earth. A renewed moon concerns the earth, moon, and sun in relation to one another. And he has a picture up here that has like the sun above the earth. I'll show that. Levon, blessings. Okay. All right. From Yahuwah's point of view, a day ends at sunset and a new day begins when we come into the evening period, right? We're gonna address some of his things that are incorrect based on what nature teaches us, right? Everything Yahuwah want us to see and understand can be verified in nature, right? It can be verified in nature and also can be verified in our bodies, right? I'm just saying, don't let nobody pull the wool over your eyes or put a banana in your tailpipe. From Yahuwah's point of view, a day ends at sunset and a new day begins. Genesis chapter 1. We just explained the real interpretation of that. He started creation He started creation with complete darkness and and light followed, even as a day begins at. Hold on, where? Okay. He started creation with complete darkness. Clearly, it was dark and void, right? He started creation with complete darkness, and light followed, even as a day begins at night or with the evening period and progresses until it is fully light, then wanes again, and that waning is another evening period. Remember, the dusk wanes toward the night. The renewal of the moon follows this pattern. If we begin a new moon with zero light and watch the growth of light on the face of the moon each evening, we can become skilled at determining what day of the moon it is. That is true. Simply by doing that for over the last 3 years, watching it, you can really tell. And if you get really good and you're really tracking it, you will be able to pinpoint the days of the month, right? You'll begin to also, you will recognize that there are transition periods between each month, and those longer transition periods tells you that that previous month is one of the longer months, right? And the shorter transition periods is one of the shorter months, right? Okay, you just got to get out there and do it to see, and then you'll literally, like clockwork. You know, you can literally look. I'm like, oh, it's such and such. You know, day of the month. If we follow the idea that sighting the crescent moon at sunset is the beginning of the first day of the month, then we ignore the fact that the light we are seeing as a crescent represents the amount of light that had been building on it when we could not see the moon disk in the brilliance of the sun, and it is really the beginning of the second day of the moon. That's, you go read in the book of Enoch, you will begin to understand that as you actually go out there and look, because clearly it doesn't just light up. It's building up its light as it begins to rise with the sun. The black disk, it rises and sets with the sun till it gets enough of the light from the sun where it can take in one portion of that light into itself, and boom, it's illuminated, right? You got to really study the book of Enoch, the chapter 72 through 82 of Enoch. You really got to study that and actually go out into nature and watch and track for it to click, right? Took me a little while, but I ain't give up on it. It was exciting. Okay. We must begin our count with zero, which is when the moon has reached its center point between the earth and the sun. When we see the light of a thin crescent, we are seeing the light of the fully built first day. If we call the beginning of the second day of the moon the first day, then our count to the annual Sabbaths will be 1 day off. The full moon is consistently the 15th day of each moon, and the feast of Matzah as well as Sukkot begin on the 15th day of the moon. Remember, the feast of Matzah is the feast of unleavened bread. That's the spring feast. And Sukkot, which is also called tents, booth, tabernacles, shelters, Sukkot, that also begins on the 15th day of the 7th month, which is a fall feast. The full moon is consistently on the 15th day of each moon, and the feast of Matzah or unleavened bread, as well as Sukkot or booths, tabernacles, tents, shelters, begin on the 15th day of the moon when it is full or not waning, right? A text in Psalms describes the Feast of Trumpets and the festival of Sukkot in the 7th moon. Consider this text, which describes Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah is another name for the Feast of Trumpets, right? And demonstrates how the festival of Sukkot or booths begins on the full moon. Psalm 81:3. Blow the shofar at the time of the new moon, at the full moon on our festival day. That's clearly a reference to the 7th month of the year, because that's the only time of the year where you have those things going, where you blow the shofar on a new moon, preparing for the festival on the full moon, right? We know that anybody that actually been practicing it would recognize that in the scripture. Oh, they talking about the fall feast. They talking about trumpets and Sukkot or booths, right? I rarely use the word Sukkot, right? Okay. The starting point for a renewed moon continues to be a point of debate among various groups of Nazarene today. Many illustrations are provided, like the one above, often promoting a sliver crescent moon sighted in the western sky after sunset as being the beginning of the first day of a moon. The sighting of the crescent silver is declared to be the arrival of the first day of the moon. Most accept this explanation and never question where this can be confirmed in the writings of Scripture, Torah, the instruction. This activity is not found in the Torah, but rather it is derived from the Quran and the Hadith of Islam. The crescent moon of Allah was the tribal symbol of Muhammad's family. The Arabic word for the crescent new moon is hilal, the same word found in the Hebrew text of Isaiah chapter 14, which is translated as Lucifer in the KJV. C.H. Hebrew Strong's number 1966 in your concordance. Hilal is the Islamic term for the sighting of the crescent moon and is definitely associated with the pre-Islamic moon deity Allah. Allah is a pronoun, not a name. So if you have the book, you will see that there's two different spellings, right? When it's talking about the moon deity, is two L's, A-L-L-A-H. But Allah, A-L-A-H, is a pronoun, not a name. It's Hebrew. The moon crescent is a very ancient symbol revered by Persia, India, Egypt, Islam, and Masonry. At the higher levels of Freemasonry, the royal secret is revealed to the light seekers that they worship Lucifer under various names, one of which is Allah. Masons seek the light. Shalom, Valeria, Rod. The name of the book. Oh, okay. Thanks, Ma. You put it. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, the name of the book is Fossilized Customs, Jatina. Thanks, Mom, for posting it. Yep. I always post the link in the description box, so you can go to any of the videos that I did in the last few months. Every day that we're reading, whatever book we're reading out of, I always put the link. So if you go back further, before we started reading this, you will see the link for, what's the book we read before this? I had it right there and I forgot it. But anyway, whatever we're reading, it'll be in the comment section. Well, not in the comment section, in the description box. And you can just click on it. You can get it from Amazon. If they don't have any more copies on Amazon, you can actually go right to their website. I think it's TorahZone.net. Yeah, TorahZone.net. And you can purchase your copy right from there. Auntie, hey. Right. What was we reading before this, y'all? Legends of the Jews. Thank you. You did. You put L-O-J. Thank you. Legends of the Jews. Yeah. So you'll see the link for the Legends of the Jews. Thank you. All right. Okay. Let me find my spot. Okay. Hilal is the Islamic term for the sighting of the crescent moon and is definitely associated with the pre-Islamic moon deity Allah. Allah, A-L-A-H, is a pronoun, not a name. It's Hebrew. The crescent moon is a very ancient symbol revered by Persia, India, Egypt, Islam, and Masonry. At the higher levels of Freemasonry, the royal secret is revealed to the light seekers that they worship Lucifer under various names, one of which is Allah. Masons seek the light. Right, so this is something I learned. This is something I actually learned before Yahuwah started opening my eyes. When I realized, I was like, oh shoot, no, they not. They taking this oath and they saying like JC and stuff. I was like, wait a minute. They're like worshiping Lucifer. And I started looking to it, started uncovering some stuff. I was like, holy crap. They're really worshiping Lucifer. And that's the point where I realized some people who use the general term God are not talking about the same God I may be talking about. So now we got to decide. That's why I purposely call Yahuwah by name, just so that there be no misunderstanding on who I worship and who you worship. Because I don't really know, especially if I don't know your life. You can't just come up to me talking about some praise God. Like, I don't know you, bruh. Identify your God. It's the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The same God that talked to the prophets, Elijah, Jeremiah, all of them. Is we tracking the same, or is we not? Right? I know that's poor English, and I did it on purpose. In order for a person to become a Shriner, he must go through all the degrees of masonry, making blood-curdling oaths, worshiping all various gods of Egypt, and make a blood oath of allegiance to Allah as his God and Muhammad as his prophet. The Shriner is then given a red fez with an Islamic sword and a crescent jeweled on it. If y'all ain't read about the red fez and what they represent, y'all should probably Google that, right? The Shriner is then given a red fez with an Islamic sword and a crescent jeweled on it. This originates from 7th century Arabia, when the Muslims, under the leadership of Muhammad, slaughtered all Christians who would not bow down to Allah. Allah is the tribal deity, the moon god of Muhammad. That is why every mosque today has a crescent moon on the top of its dome. A dome is a symbol of Hermes, the Greek deity of wisdom, revered by Masonry. The Hebrew word kippah, yarmulke, I think I pronounced that wrong, or yarmulke, that little tiny head you smack them on the back of the head with, it means dome. That's what that represents. Y'all got Jewish people walking around here. They really worshiping Yah. Now y'all know. The bull or ox with a white crescent moon on his shoulder is the Egyptian Apis. It was believed he would emerge from a river and rise into the air when the Egyptians gathered around him with music and chanting. Good morning, Dream Sky Lover. Moon worship was the primary religious practice of the city known today as Jericho. It is thought that the name is derived from the Canaanite name Yahweh, meaning moon. The moon was sometimes worshipped as a male and other times as a female. And so he got this right here, like the little moon symbol, like 3 different phases of it right there. Okay. The pre-Islamic Arabian moon deity was Allah, the greatest deity of 360 idols in the Kaaba and the tribal deity of Muhammad. Mecca was the center of pre-Islamic pagan worship. In the Quran, Allah swears by the moon in the verse at Surah 74, verse 32. That's a book, Surah. Surah. At Surah, chapter 74, verse 32. Before Islam, the pagan Arabian moon deity Allah had 3 daughter goddesses, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, who were considered very powerful. The symbol above represent these daughters. Their names appeared in several verses of the earliest versions of the Quran, but the texts were later removed and labeled satanic verses. They were the maiden, mother, and crone goddesses of the Arabs. In 1988, Salman Rushdie published a book entitled Satanic Verses, or it's not satanic, he put Shatanic Verses, so if you go looking for it, that's how you're going to find it. Shatanic, Shatanic. Shatanic, Shatanic Verses, which Shatanic is still Satan, so y'all probably won't go looking for it, but just in case y'all going to do some research or whatever, that's how it's written out. In 1988, Salman, Salman, Rushdie, 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 okay. In 1988, Salman Rushdie published a book entitled Shatanic Verses, citing the verses of the Quran mentioning the 3 daughters of Allah that had been deleted. In response to this book, A fatwa, or which is a religious edict, was issued in 1989 by Ayatollah Khomeini, then supreme leader of Iran, calling for the death of Salman Rushdie. Wiccans honor the goddess, and the crescent moon is the primary symbol for her. This deity has been worshipped under various names such as Diana, Artemis, Selene, and Libertas. The Latin name Libertas was adopted by Thomas Jefferson when he named the U.S. Capitol building the Temple of Libertas and placed her statue atop the dome. He was a Mason. He was a Mason and simply had to honor the moon deity. Our capital was dedicated to the Greco-Roman moon deity. If Paul were to visit Washington, D.C., he could almost believe he was in Athens or Rome. We have strongholds to overcome. A stronghold is a false belief or notion, and are overcome with truth. The sighting of the crescent moon comes from every corner of ancient pagan worship. In ancient Syria, the moon deity Sin, S-I-N, was represented by the crescent moon. In bread was baked in the form of a crescent to honor their moon deity, Nanar, giving us the custom of crescent rolls or croissants. And Claude knows I love me some crescent rolls. Am I going to stop eating them? Probably not. But then again, I don't know, right? Because every time I look at them now, I'm going to be like, darn it. We're going to have to figure something out. Okay. The word Monday comes from the Latin name for the second day, dies lune, day of the moon. Many languages reflect this custom. French lundi, and Spanish lunes, German Montag, Dutch Maandag, maybe that's wrong, Maandag, Maandag, Italian Lundi, and Japanese. The days are mentioned in order for the sun, moon, then 5 planets. Over the whole earth, the cultures have adopted terms from the worship of the celestial objects, but one stiff-necked people have remained stubborn enough to never fully assimilate into whatever culture they have found themselves. They would be what we call Jews, or the people descended from the tribe of Judah. If we examine when they observe the renewed moon, we find they reckon from the dark moon. This way, the full moon on the 15th is always correct for the count of matzah, or unleavened bread, in the first moon, and Sukkoth, or the Feast of Tents, Tabernacles, Booths, or Shelters, in the 7th moon. Remember, because I told you when I was first learning how to do it, I was counting starting with the crescent moon. I was like, wait, this is wrong, because I keep ending up past the full moon. So that's when I was like, okay, let me start doing it backwards. When we get to the full moon, that's how I figured out how I was making my mistake, and keeping with the book of Enoch and how to count it. I was like, oh, it's so right. And when he was talking about the transition days, the actual dark days of the moon, where you can't see it, but when the moon is dark, she is considered new. But you just can't call her out and recognize her, oh yeah, with a new moon, until you can actually see the light that's in her, right? But if you've been following from the previous month, when she completely is diminished of all her light, you will know that the new moon is here, although you can't see her, right? So when I started counting backwards, that's when I realized, oh, so this is what Enoch was talking about when he was talking about the transition days. Here's where men go wrong. And clearly, that is true. I was going wrong. I was like, I keep ending up past the full moon. How is this? This is supposed to be the 15th day, but my count is still off. Where am I making a mistake? And that's when I started pouring over the book of Enoch. I was like, let me reverse engineer this. Let me start counting. Well, wait till we get to the full moon, figure out what day that is, then count backwards and look at the data from the previous days. And that's when I began to notice the cycle. I'm like, oh, shoot. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And that's when I started going back for the previous months, looking at my stuff, looking at what the what the moon phase was for that day, and I began to notice that pattern. I was like, oh, so this is when it is. So this here, boom, boom, boom. And that's when I decided, okay, so when I see the new moon, this is what makes sense. And I counted it. People may explain it a little different than I count it, but I explain it this way. The day that the new moon shows, we call that the new moon day. And then we begin the counting that way. Although that may seem off to some people, but based on my data, it makes sense in my mind. If I explain that to somebody, they may still get their count off. But that's why I need to sit and explain the whole thing and how I did that. That way, by doing that, to me, at least so far, for once I got it, I had to go back and check it. By doing it that way, to me, it keeps me cognizant of the transition days where the moon is completely dark and we can't see her, and make sure we end up the count right on the 15th day where the moon is full, right? Because the moon is full on the 15th day of the month ever since it was created. It's always, the full moon is always the 15th day of the month. And by me doing it that way to keep my count correct based on what I knew, counting it that way will always end up right? So, like I said, that may just sound like a bunch of blah blah to y'all, but that's how I keep the count correct in my head and actually seeing it in the sky, which accounts for the dark days as well, or the transition days, or the days where the moon hasn't necessarily gotten enough light from the sun to where she begins to illuminate herself, right? Okay. All right. I may have lost some of you, but if you start looking into it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. Hold on. Let me go back up. If we examine when they observe the renewed moon, we find they reckon from the dark moon. This way, the full moon on the 15th is always correct for the count of matzah in the first moon, and on Sukkot or Tabernacles in the 7th month or the 7th moon. We must begin the measuring of time from 0, which means zero light or darkness, as the first day of the moon is building. The moon is moving away from the conjunction between Earth and the sun, hidden in the brilliance of the sun. The light reflected from the limb of the moon builds slowly until we can finally see the effects of the past time on the moon just after sunset, when she's lit up enough to show that sliver where she's present for like 2 to 4 hours. We're at a new month, new moon day, right? Okay. The sighting of the crescent sliver declares the second day of the moon is beginning. It can't possibly be the timing of the first day. It is already fully built. Prior to the renewed moon, a crescent of the moon can be seen in the eastern sky just before sunrise on the 29th day of every moon, which is often noticed by those awake in the early morning hours. When I was a paper boy in my youth, I often saw this waning crescent. A shepherd will also recognize this and know that the renewed moon would be the following day. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 18. So Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and you shall be missed, because your seat shall be empty." Sheep herders are often awake all night. Today we know exactly where the moon is and when the renewed moon arrives. Long ago, they knew how to count and notice the waning crescent before sunrise. We can determine where the moon will be far into the future, even to predict when and where the shadow of the moon will fall. Eclipses. We know where it is down to the inch. Recognizing the phases for what they are need not be a cause for division, and yet every annual Sabbath there are at least 3 divisions among the Nazarene as how to reckon the renewed moon. The teachings we embrace are strongholds of thought, and we must overthrow the errors in teaching with Scripture. Let me just finish reading this because this is going to go into a whole nother section tomorrow. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 6. For the weapons we fight with are not fleshly, but mighty in Yahuwah for overthrowing strongholds, overthrowing reasonings and every high matter that exalt itself against the knowledge of Yahuwah, taking captive every thought to make it obedient to Yahuwah, and being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is complete. Consider the appointed times we should be observing, as we have been enjoined to Yahuwah. We become engrafted to Israel and his covenant. Leviticus chapter 23. The Sabbath, weekly Sabbath, Passover, unleavened bread, Shabuot, called Pentecost, and the appointments of the seventh moon, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, also known as trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacles. Think of how these are Yahuwah's redemption plan for Israel, and that Yahuwah's work has and will be accomplished. Okay. Think of how these are Yahuwah's redemption plan for Israel, and that how Yahuwah has worked and will be accomplishing that redemption through all these shadows, or foreshadowing how using these moedim, or these feast days, there's like a, for those who are keeping it, when you begin to realize it, you'll realize by keeping these, it's literally, they're encoded. They're teaching you about how Yahuwah truly redeems us, right? So, like I said before, like if people just like, oh, that was done away with, we didn't got to do that, you're missing a whole nother intimate teaching that you will begin to understand if you actually begin to keep the feast, right? There are some things I just would not understand today had I not started keeping the feast. Even though when I started, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too much, right? But listening to other people tell you how to do it, it became too much, because they imposed their man-made rules when Yahuwah said, just do this on the Sabbath. Just go rest, right? While they doing all this, you don't cut on this and don't cut on this, and we need to pre-rip our toilet paper so we can wipe our butt if we should have to poop on the Sabbath, right? I'm like, what? Y'all pre-rip toilet paper? Y'all, it gets foolish, right? Yahuwah said, look, don't. And I was like, is we supposed to be doing all this? Like, for real? Because first of all, I'm gonna just be honest. It's too much. I ain't pre-ripping toilet paper. Like, I'm serious. I just be like, y'all, look, is this how we supposed? Because it seemed like this is going way overboard. He said, just rest, chill out, Pam. I'm like, okay, so I'm just resting. Just mean like I'm sleeping, right? I got to do all this other stuff because they preparing to do stuff on the Sabbath. And they say to me right here, stay in your home, so I can stay home, like not going joining all their little festivities, which seem like it's going to be work for somebody, But it said, you tell us we to rest and our servants are to rest. Even if we got servants, men servants, women servants, we got donkey, cattle, all of them supposed to rest too. So we all supposed to stay home. We ain't going to join these festivities today. Okay, we staying home, right? It's simple. So by keeping the Sabbaths, keeping the feast days, as you begin to keep it over the course of time, when you break yourself out of doing it just because we're supposed to do this religious thing to do, when you get past that point and you just kind of just go with it, okay, this is what we do. Like, you literally make it a part of life, and you breathe, and you get rid of all the extra man-made stuff that really makes it a hassle to do. Then Yahuwah begins to enlighten you, and he begins to show you some things like, oh, snap. Yo, that's what this means. This is what we're practicing for. And it really becomes a joy, right? He said these things will give you life, right? It will give you life. It will illuminate you. It will open your understanding to see those things we could not have seen before when we weren't keeping it, right? So for all those that's still in the habit, that's done away with, Jesus paid it all. We ain't got to do that no more. Okay, y'all, if that's working for y'all, go ahead. But I'm telling you, life is really found over here, right? Okay, I'm just saying. All right. The shadows outline the solid object casting them, so they are prophetic symbols pointing to something highly important, right? So these feast days, these moedim, they point to something else. The plan, as Yahuwah has laid it out for our redemption, the plan of redemption. Reflect on the following correction of this verse we are all familiar with. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or drink, or in respect of festival, or of the new moon, or of Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come for the body of Yahuwah. Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 through 17. Restoring this verse to its literal Hebrew roots, the meaning comes through clearly. The festivals are shadows, picturing how Yahuwah redeems Israel. And this is where we pause today. So tomorrow we'll pick up on the sighted moon origins, right? Where can you find unleavened bread? Well, you can buy it in a store on Matzah, but you can also make it too. Google, Jatina, how to make unleavened bread. It's like really simple. It's a lot of different videos. Find one of the shortest ones. You ain't got to make it all elaborate. Literally some flour, but you got to make sure you get the right type of flour, like the non-rice, and make sure it doesn't have any kind of leavening agents in it, right? Get some flour, some salt, water, and oil, right? Some people sprinkle some sugar in it. Literally, it's really like flour, salt, and water. Literally, 3 ingredients, right? But some people like to get a little, creative with theirs, and that's up to you, right? If you're just trying to get it done, just keep it simple. Them 3 ingredients: flour, oil, and water. And it's really it's tasty if you do the right ratios. I messed it up quite a few times. So you get that perfect ratio. So if somebody giving you a good recipe, keep to their instructions until you get to where you can add your own little pizzazz on it. Because some people they add other stuff. They start adding onions and whatever. It's whatever. But to keep it simple, 3 ingredients: flour, oil, and water. Yeah, so, but, yeah. Does that mean that assemblies meeting on Sabbath are breaking the Sabbath? Yaakova. To me, that's what it seemed like, right? But who am I to say that, right? I just told you what the whole conversation I had with Yah and what I read in Scripture. Now I know you see them in the tabernacle and stuff, because if you in the tabernacle on the Sabbath, that means somebody got to set up stuff. And that's working. Yahuwah said he wants everybody, including the priest. Like, everybody should be resting, right? If we read through this in the Old Testament, that's when he taught them how to observe the Sabbath by not giving them manna on the 7th day. Like, what y'all come out here to work for? There's nothing here. I said stay home. Like, don't even come out here looking. Don't come out here doing nothing. So, in my understanding, it would seem that they are breaking the Sabbath by doing that, but they're doing what they understand at this point. But my understanding is you keep your tail home. Everybody, right? So that's my understanding. Jatina, when is the Sabbath? Now, I got probably like a gajillion videos explaining this. Some people may not agree with me, but there are some people who are realizing that I might be on to something. Not that I'm the only one, because when I started tracking, looking at when I was reading the book of Enoch, this is when all this stuff started coming up, and I started realizing some things, right? So trying to do the count, learning about nature and the actual rotation and how it goes out, I began to realize that, wait a minute. Okay, and so then now you gotta, not just that, but you also have to think about the current calendar. We're on the Gregorian calendar. It's called the Gregorian calendar. The August and all this stuff, right? This is the Gregorian calendar, right? And we know if during Constantine's era they screwed with the calendar, even with just knowing some of the things that they did, you would have to know that during this period of time where they deleted 14 days from the calendar, like, where did these 14 days go? That there was a shift in time, which shifted everybody like 14 days. Like, how do you just remove those from, how do you go from the 2nd of the month to the 16th day of the month? Like, literally, if you go back and check, like, Google, you can Google, like, the missing days from the calendar, or and I think they did it during the Julian calendar, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. It was either the Julian or the Gregorian when they did that. Excuse me, when they started screwing with time, they deleted days, which caused things to shift. And if up to that point we were keeping the Sabbath at its appointed times, clearly it would have been thrown off track by them doing this, right? So how is it still that it's every single, according to Yahuwah's calendar, right? And remember, I be doing this. This is Yahuwah's calendar. I know this only 5 fingers, but I only got 5 fingers. But get the example I'm trying to show you. If this is Yahuwah's calendar and it's been fixed, always has been fixed, will forever be fixed in the same manner in which He fastened it, right? It doesn't move. It continues to move, and the Sabbath day, the day that we rest, is always on the 7th day. But now we come screwing with time, moving stuff around, and you try to take a calendar and trying to blind people and superimpose it over whose calendar. It doesn't stay fixed like that. They moving it. They constantly changing it around and changing the days, where in the background it's always fixed. It's always been on a certain day, right? And it's always been. So now, in order to keep it, let's just say this is the Sabbath day, right? I know this only 5 fingers. I know some people they just, this is the example. I only got 5 fingers, y'all. If I had 7, I'd use my 7-fingered hand, but I only got 5. So say this is the Sabbath day, right? And it's always fixed on the 7th day. Say this is the 7th day where we rest. Keep it separate from all the other days. These are days we work. Separate this. Everybody rest on this day, right? Set apart, right? This is my days. We chill, we rest at home. We just, rejuvenating, right? Keep it set apart, separate from all the other days of the week, right? So if this is here, and they got their screwy calendar superimposed where everybody now is on this screwy calendar, in order to get back on Yahuwah's calendar, to make sure we're celebrating the Sabbath on the day that He has commanded from the beginning of time, in order to stay there, it's going to have to rotate on this calendar, right? So it would seem to us that the Sabbath would be rotating. And in order to keep it on the correct day, by aligning, that's why you got to understand the moon cycle and the sun and the stars. You have to understand it, because that's not going to change either. And it's in line with that. So once you begin to understand the clock in the sky and the phases of the moon and how it operates, remember I tell you, if you study it long enough, you will be able to call out the day of the month just by looking at what's going on in the sky. Once you're able to do that, and once you recognize that, you might be like, wait a minute. So why? And here's proof. On the Gregorian calendar, right, everything rotates except for the Sabbath. Why is everything else on the Gregorian calendar rotating, but you keeping the Sabbath on Friday? Or some people say Saturday. It will fall on a Friday, and it will fall on a Saturday throughout the course of the year on a Gregorian calendar, but it's always fixed on the same day. You're looking at the sky we're at a Sabbath day, right? We're at a Sabbath. But so according to us, it rotates. So it's not if we're living on the Gregorian calendar, the Sabbath will not be every single Friday, or it will not be every single Saturday. Like we just had a new moon, and I've learned through my studies that the new moon is the beginning of the new month. Clearly, we know we just called it out, but the moon has started. The new month has started before we can actually see the first sliver in the sky, which tells us where we're at. Okay, and when we see that, we know that it's also, just through data and study and looking, we recognize that the new moon, when the actual sighting of it, it's also the line leader for the Sabbath days for that moon cycle. So whatever day the new moon, where we can actually call it out and see it, that is the line leader for the Sabbaths. Whatever day the new moon, the sighting of the new moon falls on, that is what the Sabbaths would be on for that moon cycle. So for this moon cycle this month, which straddles the month of August and September, the Sabbath will be on every single Monday, right? So over the last couple months, it moved, and it just progressed throughout the week, right? And it should. And if you did it that way, it would be just like, think about your birthday. My birthday is March the 30th of every year, right? But my birthday, every single year, it rotates throughout the week. So one year my birthday may be on a Monday. The next year my birthday may be on a Tuesday. The next year is going to be on a Wednesday. But then something happens. That next year it skips a day And now it goes from Wednesday to Friday. And I began to notice that same pattern in the monthly and the weekly counting just by me. Because remember, I track everything, right? So in order, look, I'm telling you, when you don't actually put some of this stuff into practice, you would never be able to catch the pattern and what is happening. And because I'm a person who likes detail and I like data and I write stuff down simply because I don't like to try and remember everything in my head because it screws me up sometimes. So by me writing things down, I can go back and check my data. I really only like to keep in my head what I need to keep in my head. Anything else that I can write down and come back to it later, that's what I'm going to do, right? I know exactly where to find it. And as I began to go back and check my data, and I pull up like the moon app and different things from NASA and looking at data, I'm like, oh shoot, wait a minute, what is going on? You begin to see something happening, and it's like, wait a minute. And I told you guys, I've been doing it for like 3 years. Like the first year, I'm just like, what? But I knew I was on to something. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and that's when I decided I better write this down. I say, because this is changing, but I'm not quite catching it. So that's when I started writing it down, and I started checking, even writing down the moon phase. Okay, it looks like this on this day, this right here on this day, boom, boom, boom. Oh, so this, wait a minute, wait. What is going on? Start looking at stuff and you begin to notice it. So that's why I said, sometimes explaining it to people, if they're not actually tracking it or doing it themselves, is always fuzzy and they can't really understand it. And some people, I get it. Some people just like, you know what, that's too much. Just share with me what you got. I trust you and I'm just going to follow it like you follow it. And that can be good if you got somebody that's honest, right? And especially if you got somebody, if they make a mistake, if they're not too prideful, like, wait a minute, guys, hold up, made a mistake. Wait, we need to correct something. If you got somebody like that, then okay, right? Then I think that's okay. But still, you really shouldn't leave your life up to chance or anybody else, because you are responsible for your own life, right? And so if you decide to take information from somebody and apply it to your life, and you find out it's wrong, or they find out it's wrong, and they decide, oh, because I'm this, or I don't need to do this, or what if they knew I'd have made a mistake? They go, yes, baby.
I can some more cake.
Go ahead, Pooh. They're going to realize, or they might think less of me because of this. And some people just never correct their mistake because they're afraid of how other people are going to look at them. You're not going to, I know it's the last one. Leave her alone. And they're more afraid of what people are going to say. Then that's what kind of get people hemmed up sometime, and they get people in trouble, right? So, like I said, if you're not going to follow it yourself and keep the data yourself, make sure I ain't saying follow me, because I found there are some other people that are actually doing it, and it really did my heart good, because at first when I started doing it, I wasn't going to look for other people to see. I was like, wait a minute, I'm noticing something here, and I was praying about it. I'm like, Father, something is wrong about this. I was like, but something seems right, because it's like, and at that point I had already realized Yahuwah was showing me that everything can be proven in nature, right? Anything that he wants us to understand, he's always left us a witness. So even if people try to lead us astray, if we try to look for Yahuwah, we will find him. He's always left a witness in nature and even in our body. So I'm using that as my guide. Okay, let me do this. And so when I first started trying to share, and y'all know, if y'all been here that long, you'll know, you'll remember when I said, guys, we're gonna stop doing it, because when we started, we were resting like every Friday, right? We were resting, we count off as the Sabbath. But at that time when we were doing it, I had already kind of started learning about it. And once I was convinced, I guess I was convinced, but I was still kind of shaky on what people were saying to me, because few people said they sent me messages. A couple people called me on the phone. They was like, what are you doing? How can you change the Sabbath? I was like, well, I'm not changing the Sabbath. And I tried to explain to them what I was finding, even tried to share it, but it was like, nope, you're going off the path. Satan then got a hold of you. And I'm like, ugh. Then that kind of shook me for a second, because I didn't want to be doing something wrong. I was like, well, shoot, Satan, I rebuke thee. Like, seriously. And I changed it back. We were doing it like every Friday. We resting on Friday. Then I got them few messages, and I'm like, oh, but what if they right and I'm wrong? And so I came back and I did a whole video. I was like, guys, I'm sorry. And I said, as few people came, and I was like, and I'm really not sure. But I was sure. But I allow other people to shake me. And all that time I had spent going through stuff, and I was praying, and I had proof. But when people started giving me kickback, like, well, this can't be, girl, you know, but I'm like, what have you looked at it? No, but this is what, how would they be doing? All the world is doing it this way. Why would you come change it? You're clearly, but I'm like, but just because they're doing it doesn't mean that it's right. They could have been doing something for a very long time and still doing it wrong, right? So, but I'm like, look, and after that, let me tell you what happened. Yes.
Stop getting candy.
No, you're just mad because you didn't get it. You're mad because she got the last one and you didn't get it. I know you did it. It wasn't yours anyway. They belong to Dad. Hold that, Josiah. Hold that. So, but what happened was, let me tell you what happened. What happened personally is my whole personal life began to be disrupted, right? Because I had listened to other people, like all this time I had spent, and I'm praying. I'm like, y'all, you got to show me proof of this, and that. And like he was walking, I could see proof of it. And I'm writing it down. But when I allow other people to shake me, which is when I really understood what Yahuwah was saying to like Jeremiah. He said, set your face like a flint and don't be afraid of what the people are saying. He said, because if you allow them to do this, he said, I'm going to devastate you. And I was like, oh, shoot, I know exactly what you meant when you said that, right? He said, don't be afraid of people's faces, right? Because people, they're content with doing things the way it's always been. This is comfortable for us. Even if the comfortability may be comfortable and wrong, they don't care. This is the way it's always been done. This is the way we will continue doing it. Right. And so I'm just like, ooh, and I struggle. Like I was I really cried. Like I was upset with myself that I had allowed people to, I ain't gonna say make me change it back, but I allowed what they said in the kickback to shake me what I knew to be the truth. And then it stayed like that. But my personal life, my walk, and it was like I wasn't hearing y'all. It was like when he stopped speaking to me, I'm like, oh, bump this. Hey, we changing this back. I was like, I ain't getting on track for none of you niggas. None of you Regins. Right? When y'all hear me say Regins is N-I-G-G-A spelled backwards. But I try to be nice and not say that. Some people are like, oh my gosh, girl, watch your mouth. We don't want to hear that word. But I'm just telling you how I was feeling. I was like, you know what? I ain't letting none of y'all Regins throw me off. And I know you who, like, I'm acquainted with that voice. And when that voice stops speaking to me, I know I've done something wrong. And it causes me to stop immediately. And I was like, wait a minute, what have I done?
Mom.
Yes.
Another day.
And so that's why we switched it back. I'm like, Father, forgive me. I repent. I'm sorry. I was like, okay. So I'm going to just, if people kick back. Wait a minute, before I'm almost done. If people kick back, they just kick back. I know. I said, wait a minute.
Dad, buy some more. Dad, get some more. And that's the last one so I can get one.
Thank you. Yeah. See, they're saying they want to talk to me about this cake that they didn't just ate out of their deadest stuff. And they want to get their message across about the cake. But anyway, y'all, it's time to go. So, but yeah, you always get that when you go against the grain of the word. Yeah, I know, boy, tell me about it. But I got some family members that that don't even talk to me no more. I'm like, really? I'm like, seriously? And it, it's kind of hurtful, but it's like, you know what? It is what it is, So I'm just like, seriously, this is something you can like really go look in for yourself, But anywho, y'all, we done for the day. We read, I flipped my page, going through my stuff. Okay. It is August the 12th, 2021, day 231 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 900. We read Ezekiel chapter 20, 21, and 22. In the Fossilized Customs, we read page 305 to page 309. All right, y'all. So, but yeah, so the Sabbath this month, according to how I calculate it, is now on a Monday, right? So on the Mondays, we will be resting. So when this next Monday come up and we ain't here, don't come searching for me because I'm probably still in the bed asleep. Matter of fact, I will still be in the bed asleep. And then again, maybe not. Kids might be up talking about they hungry. But anywho, let's go.
They might talk about they're hungry. I sleep in bed after I
Stop putting it away. Yeah, I know, but this little person right here, Mom, I was the first one up. I'm hungry. Can you fix something to eat? Wait, Sweetie, don't cut it off yet. We still got to do the blessing. Okay, y'all. The blessing is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. Remember, the first 21 verses of Numbers chapter 6 is the Nazirite vow. Man or woman can take the vow. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, Yahuwah will kneel before us, presenting gifts, and will guard us with a hedge of protection. Yahuwah will illuminate the wholeness of his being toward us, bringing order, and he will provide us with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahuwah will lift up his wholeness of being and look upon us, and he will set in place all we need to be whole and complete. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people. My background is just getting loud. And that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out, y'all. Love you. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. James Scott, love them. All right, come on. Come on up here and press it. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Can I get some
Go ahead.